Hey folks, Dave here. If you had asked me a while ago what my favorite character types were, dragons would not have made probably even the top 10 list. But I have noticed that whenever I look at 3D model websites, I am always drawn to the dragon figures. So there's something about dragons that interests me. So I think that's why I was excited when Loot Studios released this massive dragon figure, and he's called Fafnir The Corruption Incarnate, which sounds like a pretty badass name for a dragon. And this model comes in two different sizes, the smaller version and this really massive size. And when I'm looking at models, I'm looking primarily for one factor, and that is how will this model look in front of a camera? Because that's really what I do. Is I'm a toy photographer, miniature photographer, and I make models in order to be props for my photography. So thought number one, how is this going to look in front of the camera? And my thoughts kind of went with the smaller one's easier to print and paint up and deal with because it's smaller. But the bigger one will have more details, and more details translates into better photos. So I'm going to print off the big one. And when I say the big one, I mean the big one. This is by far the largest print I will have done to date. To give some examples, I've done one dragon print before, or one dragon photo before. It's on my channel. I'll link to it wherever links go. And this is the figure here. And this was printed off into five, the two wings, the main body, the tail, and the base. So 5 pieces to come up with this figure that's about 12 inches across. And this is a decent size figure. So Fafnir here, the smaller version's probably roughly the same size as this one, but the larger one actually comes with dozens and dozens of parts. And each one of those pieces, most of them take up an entire build plate worth of 3D prints. So this is going to take a while to print. So the first thing I did was actually print off the head, which is right here. So for comparison, this is the head of Fafnir in the full scale model. And this is the other dragon. So you can see the difference is massive. So this dragon is going to be huge. I figure he's going to be 2.5 feet wide. So yeah, this is going to be a project. So I may as well start getting going and printing off the prints. It's going to take probably about 2 weeks. So let's get going. What's up with this? Things were going so well, then all of a sudden my print started developing these holes, mysterious holes in them, and I couldn't figure out why. Now, it's not uncommon for resin 3D printers to have some problems, especially when it comes to cold and it is winter outside, and my shop is in the basement, so it's not impossible that things were going wrong. So I did all the things you do to kind of overcome that, but I still had all these holes, and print after print, I had this one spot that had a hole in it. I took a closer look at my 3D printer and I noticed that the LCD screen had a dim spot in it. So there's my problem. So the question is, what do I do about this? The LCD screen is actually a replaceable part, though it's not that cheap and it's a very fiddly process. On the other hand, I do know that they just released a new higher res version of my printer. So buying a new one's an option. So I guess really the difference is, what's the price difference between the buying the replacement part and all the hassle that goes with the swapping it out versus buying a new one. So let me just do a bit of research here. Yeah. The new printer arrives in 3 days. 3 weeks of printing, including the little bit with the broken printer, and I have all the pieces I need for my dragon. So now it's time to start assembling everything together. So you saw the printed dragon parts. I also printed off the base. I printed it off screen because it's not the most interesting part of this build, but the dragon does come with this base, and the dragon sits on here all menacingly. So I'm going to assemble the dragon on this thing here. The base is built up completely except for this one piece. There's this one little idol that sits here, and then this leg is going to sit on top of it like this. And I just want to make sure that when the leg is attached to the dragon body, that everything goes together. So I'm going to attach this piece last, just to make sure I have maximum flexibility in putting everything together. Otherwise, it's just going to be a matter of sanding, fitting things together, and gluing. So let's get to it. All right, so I have the body assembled and I have these wings assembled. I'm having trouble with the wings in that these pieces, the way they're kind of assembled, it's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle, and it's very hard to get these to connect seamlessly together. So I'm going to have to fill in these joints with something. I've been trying to use a technique of using baking soda and cyanide acrylate glue or crazy glue. And when those two mix together, it makes a really solid, hard compound. But it's kind of difficult to work with because it's powder. So I'm also going to try using some drywall spackle and some wood filler and fill in those gaps and try to get everything nice and solid and kind of actually build in some texture as well. And then once that's done, I should be ready to assemble the final dragon. So let's get to it. All right, I got the wings finished. I got Fafnir mostly assembled. Now all I gotta do is put the head on, wait for these wings to finish drying, and then put them on, and it will look roughly like this. it's done. It's printed, it's assembled, it's ready to go on to the next steps. And this thing is massive. It's about 26 inches from wingtip to wingtip and over 12 inches from back to front. It is by far the largest thing I have ever printed and assembled, and it's looking really great. This video has taken actually longer than I expected because of all the 3D printer problems and all that stuff. So I'm going to leave this video here, and in the next episode I'll cover painting this thing and making dioramas and throwing it in front of my camera. So I hope you stay tuned for that. And to keep up with the goings on with this dragon, with all my other work, please hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.